get through the first couple items, if appropriate. I'm not sure where the Sundog piece is, but Danny Piper's here, and if we could just move some items around to do that first, if with your permission, then we could let him go.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. We'll do the approval of the minutes and the public comment, and then we'll put him first. And for anybody else who's on here or on YouTube, I'm having some technical difficulties, so you cannot see me. I'm so sorry, but you can hear me. If we could have an approval of some minutes, please.
Gary, move to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Edits or changes?
Oh,
Okay,
one of the
Gary?
instances of my name has an S at the end of my last name, but you know, it happens.
Now, come on, Mike. You need to do better.
Fast typing.
Gary?
Approve.
Aaron?
Approve.
Darcy?
Approve.
Tom?
Approve.
So moved. I have no public comment that was sent to me. Mark, do you have anything?
No, I checked with Selena. I'm not aware of any at this time, Jennifer.
Okay.
So if I may, with your permission, Jennifer, if we're going into the new business, if I could ask Mike just to hold on his report and
Yes.
with your permission. I mean, I don't know if you need a motion to adjust the agenda. They're all listed in the same category, but with your permission, I'd like to introduce Danny Piper, and just by way of information, just a little context here. So we've been talking about solar at the Trenton School and in all of our schools for quite some time, and I think that's a good thing. You know, at the end of the day, the question of sustainability is really positive with our kids and through a climate to thrive, but there's no question about also the financial impact of it. And so as a district, we've been committed to sustainability, but also solar for quite some time. We did a massive project at the high school we're really proud of. The school received a national award for that. We did, and those were fixed panels on a flat roof. We also did a project out in Tremont with the town of Tremont, one of our AOS member schools, where we did that was unique in that they weren't fixed panels on the school. It was actually part of a solar farm, if you will. And I've mentioned these things in the past, but I really like to introduce Danny in that Danny's not here to sell you anything. We're not here with a proposal. Danny's not, we're not bidding on anything. I want to be really clear about that. I spoke with you, Jennifer, and Michael, and asked if we could ask Danny, because we've worked with Danny on the two projects I've mentioned. Danny and his family represent Sundog Solar. They're a main company. They've done right by us at the high school and at Tremont. And so today really isn't to talk about the physical aspects of what may or may not happen at the Trenton School. Just wanted to bring in one of the industry experts to give you an overview. But full disclosure, want to tell you who he was, what we had done. And then if it comes to pass that we do a project, we hope that Danny and others, we can go through the process and open it up and see what may or may not occur. But at the end of the day, I think, in working with Danny, he's here to kind of give you an overview and then to answer questions of the board. So thanks for tolerating me, but I wanted to give that overview. And Danny, I hope I didn't misrepresent anything, but welcome to the Trenton School Committee in Trenton.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. I appreciate that introduction a lot. And I just also want to say, I really appreciate the relationship that we've had with AOS 91 and the two projects that we've worked on with you guys. And we've had a lot of communications ongoingly throughout the time, and I just enjoy them every time. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And in terms of, the meeting here today, the material I sent certainly talks a little bit about specific projects. But in general, I'm on board with just educating and keeping it in that arena. So any questions that you guys have just in general about how this stuff works and what the laws are currently in the state of Maine, be happy to talk about any of that stuff. So I'm not sure if anybody was able to read any of that material I sent earlier.
Danny, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm just looking at that now, and that went to Jennifer, Mike, and me. I'm going to forward that to the board right now, and I
Oh, okay.
apologize that didn't go out. So
Yep,
I'll send
no
that to them
problem.
right now. So they have not had an opportunity to review that material.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, so basically I put together just this, basically a summary of the different financing and development options that are available.
Danny, would it help if I forwarded that to our tech guy and he pulled it up right now?
That would be great.
Okay, let me work on that while you speak.
Okay. Yeah, so the two documents I sent were the summary of these design and kind of financing options, development opportunities that exist under the current laws here in the state of Maine. And then also just a statement of qualifications for Sundog Solar and some of the projects that we've completed to show that we have experience with these project developments. So once we get this document up online, it's a couple paragraphs, so it's a little bit thick with content. But I'd like to kind of, I guess, summarize the document. You don't have to read it word for word, but starts out, so we have.
Danny, he's going to pull up the finance piece right now. And so
Okay.
you
That's
walk
good.
him through your presentations and tell him when you want him to move slides or go to the second document. Sorry to interrupt. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Mark. Yeah, so you can move to the second page there. So this is just a brief summary here of the fact that we've had a little bit of relationship with the Trenton School Board and with the town of Trenton. So this document doesn't really, I refer to the Trenton School Board, the town of Trenton, and AOS 91 in this document. It's not specific just to the Trenton School Board, although I realize that's who I'm speaking with right now. We've provided a few different proposals in the past, primarily revolving around what we call power purchase agreements, which is a development mechanism to basically to have a third-party owned project, which is one pathway for organizations that are nonprofits or municipalities, government agencies, schools. It's a way for them to see the same financial benefits as individuals or organizations that can capitalize on the tax credits and the tax benefits that are available for these projects. So when a third party owns it, the third party is who is capitalizing on those benefits, which indirectly allow the project to offer a lower rate of electricity. And I guess with a power purchase agreement, one of the big things that makes that type of a development unique is that there's potentially, not always, depends on who's developing it, but there's potentially a purchase option, which can be one of the best financial pathways for the offtake or whomever is going to purchase that system. So that's what we've provided a couple different quotes in the past. I think the latest one being in 2018. We were discussing the Trenton Elementary School's back roof at that time. I believe we provided some quotes to the Trenton Town Hall as well. I guess I'm not totally clear financially if there's separation. Maybe there is with AOS 91. So some of those things would be important, but anyhow, we've looked at a few designs in the past. We've actually analyzed like the elementary school electric bills quite a bit. And I know at the time, one of the things that was a bit of a challenge was the overall available space to do the system on. There's no roof space between the school or the town hall that is large enough to put enough array there to cover all the electrical needs. I don't remember clearly if there's if we were separating the school and the town at the time. I think we were, but I'd have to go back to look at some of that information. Back when Mills was elected, shortly after that, we adopted some new legislation that really expanded solar development here in the state of Maine. And traditionally, we just had net energy billing, kilowatt hour crediting, where for every kilowatt hour that was produced from a solar array or a net energy billed interconnected system, you would get a credit worth the same amount as that kilowatt hour. After this new legislation was adopted, it opened up some different development pathways, one of which is called bill tariff crediting. So under that pathway, instead of a kilowatt hour credit that's equal 1-to-1 to what you purchase, you get a bill tariff credit that is not quite equal to 1-to-1. It's actually your electric bill is made up of two parts, the delivery and the energy. And under bill tariff crediting, you get 100% of the energy credited and 75% of the delivery credited. And so that development pathway allows for for businesses and organizations that have larger electrical consumption and demand charges, but it's a type of billing classification you'd be in with the utility, where you would have a demand charge for the delivery. And under that circumstance, if the system was interconnected through a kilowatt hour crediting method, you would not get the full value of that kilowatt hour credit. You can't apply it against the demand. But under bill tariff crediting, you are producing a monetary credit value, and that credit value can be applied against all portions of the bill, including demand. So that really opened up a big opportunity for commercial project development, and it's made it a lot more financially viable for for like the Trenton Elementary School that has a demand charge going on, to be able to participate and get the full kilowatt hour credit value for the solar that's being produced there. So so that's really huge, just in terms of solar development in Maine, but also just for all these commercial businesses that now can really get a good value for investing in solar and generating solar kilowatt hours. So that's been exciting. And so inside of that, one of the other things that's really opened up is basically larger third-party owned solar farms, where it's more legitimately recognized, legally recognized with the utility for that development pathway to happen, where you can have a third party own the array, and you can show that there's financial interest in that array from off takers or from receivers of the kilowatt hour credits, through your agreements. So you show an agreement to the utility that out of this solar farm, X, Y, and Z organization is going to purchase 10%, and that's proven through the agreement that you have with them. Utility acknowledges that and then allows the crediting to be allocated to that account. So under that arrangement, it's different than a power purchase agreement where a third party would own the system. Typically with a power purchase agreement, it's cited on the host or the off-taker's property. That's doesn't always have to be like that, but that's a common way of doing a power purchase agreement. Versus in this other relationship, you might have a farm that's, as long as it's within the same utility territory, that's really the only limitation. You could be crediting somebody an hour and a half away from a system that's an hour and a half away. So as long as the utility is the common point in between there. So so that's been really good. And it's one of the benefits there is when you build solar at larger sizes, it reduces the unit price by a lot. So the larger the project gets, the lower the unit price of energy becomes. And so you can then offer that lower price out to your customers, and it makes it more viable for everyone. So that's a big benefit there, as well as when there are limitations to a site, like in Trenton, for instance, with the school roof, is another pathway that could allow for all of the power that the school is consuming to be offset through solar energy without any constraints about the site specifically. So those are all some of the positives there. So another thing that I would point out is, I'm in this document, I'm referring to the Trenton School Board, the Trenton Town, and ASO 91. There could be, inside of a bigger conversation, basically, a collaboration of, power purchase from one of these solar farms that allow a better rate to be achieved. So, meaning pooling everything together as one relationship can bring down cost. So if you scroll to the next page, we can jump into. So this is just a brief summary of what we quoted back in 2018, primarily on the back roof, 46.92 kW array, producing around 56,000 kilowatt hours a year. And the power purchase agreement price per kilowatt hour would be around 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And then jumping to 87.5% of the utility price per kilowatt hour. So that was like the deal that we came up with back in 2018. It was, I think, a good deal. I think the school would have done well there. I think one of the bigger limitations at that point was with the demand billing situation, and that creates just less certainty that all of the kilowatt hours were going to be able to be credited at the highest value. So that problem's been eliminated, which is really good for just solar development in general, but also for commercial customers. So anyways, if you want to scroll down to the next page here, this is just outlining kind of the three main development pathways. The school board could purchase the system outright. In that case, you would come up with the money, you would hire us or somebody else to install the array. You'd be leaving on the table at that point any value associated to tax credits or depreciation. But it's a easy, simple, fast process to go that way. It leaves you in ownership of the system as an asset. So that's one option. Second option is with the power purchase agreement, which I think, with the power purchase agreement, the way that I see that happening most, again, it doesn't have to be limited to this, but typically the array is sited on the property of the host or the off taker, or on a common property, and you're in agreement to purchase all of the power generated by that system. Under that development pathway, Sundog leaves an opportunity to purchase the system starting in year 7, the beginning of year 7. And so those, there's no money down in that relationship. It's just basically agreeing. There's a long-term agreement there, 20 to 25 year agreement, that you're going to purchase all of the kilowatt hours generated for that length of time at the predetermined rate that we agree on. So that's how that development goes. Third party owned. Up front, the tax credits and benefits are absorbed that way. It needs to be within the ownership of the development company for that 6-year time frame to prove to the IRS legally that it's owned by the development company before it's able to sell. We would be forming, a special purpose entity, a business, basically to operate that company, to operate that system. And just like with our relationship with MDI High School, we would send a bill on like a quarterly basis for the energy being generated from the system. And then on the back end of that, the school has an agreement with Versant Power to receive the credits, and so they're getting credited and then paying a lower rate for the solar kilowatt hours generated from the array. So that's in general how a power purchase agreement works. And if you scroll down to this next page, I just included a little diagram here.
Danny, the only thing to interject on that is with that high school project that you described, in 6 years, the option to buy it out, and the trustees have been putting money aside each year to do that. So in that time frame, that system ultimately that you just described will become the property of MDI High School, and so then they'll continue to reap the benefits, of that project. But just want to add that other piece in there. Thank you.
That's right. And yeah, it's important because, not all PPA relationships allow that. Like some developers don't actually want to sell it long-term. They want the long-term income. So that's important. It leaves kind of the best financial pathway for the school to do that. And I'd say on the other side of it, if you were to opt not to buy it, and just stay in the agreement for the full length of time, what you gain there is service. You gain us basically servicing and maintaining and operating the system long term. So there's value there, but there's also expense. And the reality is these systems they're electrical. They're not mechanical. They don't, they really have fairly minimal breakdown. That said, we did just have an issue at the school where we had a communication board that went down and took about a month to get a new one in there. So, there's things like that, but it didn't stop the generation. It just stopped the reporting for that month. And then once we got it connected, it backlogged and, brought everything up to date. So anyhow, that's one of the benefits, I guess, of not purchasing it long term. But the benefit of purchasing it is that the school is on its least expensive pathway of ownership. The money that the school puts out when they purchase the system will be paid back within a few years. And the way that works is the purchase rate is quite a bit lower because all the tax benefits have been absorbed off of it. So it's roughly around 50% in that 7th year. So then when the school, puts its money out to purchase the system, it'll take, I don't remember how many years, but I would say probably somewhere between like 3 and 6 years for that money for the value of that to be returned through the credits of the power being generated. And then at that point, you've broke even, and everything from there forward is free electricity. So that is the lowest expense pathway for any nonprofit organization in solar development. So this diagram here, I supplied this to the town of Alexander. That's why it says Alexander Solar there. But anyhow, and Eastern Maine Electric Co-op is in EMEC territory. But this is just a diagram that shows how a PPA works. And SPPA stands for Solar Power Purchase Agreement. So a PPA could be really any power purchase agreement. It doesn't have to be solar. But we would act as the solar service provider. We would form a special purpose entity, a business. The agreement would be between the SPE and the host, which in this case would be Trenton. The utility, has a relationship with the host as well in the crediting. We have an investor that would be aligned on the financing side of it. We would act as the installer and procurement of equipment as well. So this is just a little flow chart of how that works. And I just list out the benefits, 20+% electric savings applied to the town, the school bills, reduced carbon footprint with no money down, immediate cash flow savings, tax credit values applied through third-party ownership, and then a pathway to system ownership. So those are the main benefits of the PPA. And then option 3 is, basically this, what we're calling a NEBCA agreement, which is a net energy billing credit agreement. A little bit different than the power purchase agreement, where you're not in agreement to purchase all of the power. You're in agreement to purchase a share of credits out of a larger system. And so in that arrangement, it's similar to the PPA, where there's no upfront cost. Similar electric savings, I would say potentially slightly less than a PPA, depending on how the PPA comes together. There's one of the big benefits there's shorter term commitment. You can have a shorter term subscription and not be committed for the full length of the agreement. If for some reason the school wanted to back out of that several years into it, as the owner of the project, we could find another off-taker and get them in several years down the road. So that's a benefit there, potentially, allows you to purchase less expensive renewable power. It's a simple pathway to participate in communal energy without property limitations, and allows for green marketing and mission alignment. One of the big holdbacks there's no pathway of ownership. So it's a subscription agreement. You're going to pay more, basically. You're not going to save quite as much money in that relationship. It's still going to be good. It's still, 20% savings. It's still really good to the alternative. So, anyways, those are kind of the 3 different pathways available. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you guys have questions or you want some clarification at this point.
Danny, just before Jennifer, the board, I just want to thank you for giving the overview again. I guess two things to just throw out there. Number one of the big issues for our school it's been, widely discussed, the roof. And we know that, we're dealing with a pitched roof, and we know that at some point, regardless, I mean, the roof's okay now, but if we were going to do a project with anyone, we wouldn't want to put panels on that roof right now. So we know that. Question is, that question of, doing a new roof aside, what are the options for the school committee to consider outside? Are there going to potentially be solar farms in Trenton, A, or wide, or within the vicinity? And B, is the board limited to just that and putting fixed panels on the roof? Or could there be arrays on the property? So if you could just speak to those 2 points, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, so there are large project developments happening in Trenton. We have one in Versant territory very close to the Trenton school that we're working on. And so in terms of a solar farm within a close proximity of any of the schools in AOS territory, AOS 91 territory, it's we have a project, but there's other developers that have projects too. So there are projects in that neck of the woods available. That really has to be a limitation. You could buy power from a project, in Machias if you wanted to, but from a marketing standpoint, from an educational standpoint, it would be great to have a field trip over to the solar array, and actually see what it is, because it just, it's much different than the concept of it. So, so that's available. And I think that, for the Trenton School Board, I think what I've come across in working on the designs there is that there's limitations because of the roof surfaces, for the town. I know the town at one point was talking about updating or remodeling their town office. And so there's uncertainty there around what that roof could change into the future. And, that might not be a good idea to put panels all over it now. I know I've looked at some land that the town owns. I know there's some communication equipment near the town office, but that land's very limited. Not enough to do much of anything with for a solar project. So I think there's a lot. There's a lot of potential benefit to site the system somewhere else, and to potentially group it. Like, for instance, if AOS 91 bought power for all its schools at a one site, and utilizing that agreement to achieve a better rate, you know what I mean? So I know it's outside of the Trenton School Board, but we're just surfacing that, again, the larger the project, the lower the unit price, and the same with the purchasing. If you're going to purchase 100 kilowatt hours, that's one price. If you're going to purchase 1 million, that's another price, so.
But Danny, that gate swings both ways though. If Trenton, anywhere in Trenton, through the town and the school, whatever it would be, a capped landfill or anything, if they had a solar array big enough, AOS schools could buy that power through Trenton. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
Well, you're saying if
you have a farm big enough, that what I'm trying to ask is, if you have a farm big enough and you're producing more power than you need for the school or town, other entities could buy in and purchase power at a reduced rate. Yes. Or no? Okay. Absolutely. That's what I want. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I'm just saying that, if there's an entity that's going to buy, if there's an entity that's buying 1% of the power being produced, that rate won't be quite as strong as an entity buying 25% of the power. You know what I'm saying? So there's some financial differences going on there. And that could help AOS 91 if you were to approach it maybe with that in mind, if you wanted to keep it separate so that it's the Trenton School Board alone, it's still an option. The Trenton School Board could purchase a loan without any other involvement from AOS 91. That's available, both of those pathways. The other thing too is that, another potential idea is that if there was land that was owned, I don't know, by AOS 91 somehow, or if there was land in conjunction in the relationship somewhere, it could be possible that a power purchase agreement, a system is built with a power purchase agreement solely for the school board, for AOS 91. So that could be an arrangement that's different than one of these larger solar farms. It would still maybe be a power purchase agreement in that relationship, with a potential pathway to ownership. So those are all really available, but I mean, we're working on a 2.3 megawatt system, which is going to have, probably 2,600 megawatt hours of power to purchase out of it. So it's going to be a lot of available power for quite a few organizations, I think, in the MDI neck of the woods. So that's and that could be a very good pathway to go down. You have a lower commitment level, less time committed, still achieving a really good discount on the power. It's still physically close by, and a third party owns it, so you're just buying a subscription. You're not worried about anything with the array itself. So those are all available. And
Thank you, Danny.
what was the second part of your question? You asked about the solar
No,
farm?
you covered it, and I'm turn it back over to Jennifer and the board. I mean, thank you for the overview, because it's pretty complex, but essentially what I got out of it is you can customize what you'd like to do. So
Yeah.
thanks, Danny. Jennifer, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Danny. That was very interesting information that I didn't know. So thank you. Does anybody else on the board have any questions for Danny before we move on? Okay, seeing none. Again, thank you very much, Danny, for your time.
We'll be in
Absolutely.
touch, Danny. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Yep. Enjoy.
Okay, Mike, principals report.
Thanks for accommodating that, Jennifer. I appreciate the adjustment to the schedule.
No problem.
Good evening, everybody. Mark, thank you for bringing Danny and sort of helping set the stage that there are a variety of options. As Danny had mentioned, there are a lot of different paths that we can talk about in thinking about our school and the town, and the purchase of green power. So
Mike, just to piggyback on that, I know we're going to talk about the budget, but maybe there's an opportunity here for the school and the town. Maybe to look at land, maybe to look at, we're constantly talking about the value of education, but recognizing the financial pieces. So maybe this is something that we ought to talk about a little bit more, see if the select board or others, or through you, Jennifer, maybe this can be a piece. We're talking about being innovative with finances and revenues, and maybe here's an example. I could be wrong about that, but I just like to keep that on the table. And thanks for saying that, Mike.
So quickly with the principal's report, just an update. We have 106 kiddos who are in person and 19 who are virtual. We have, one student in the virtual academy that unenrolled because they moved down mid-coast, and then seventh grader is joining us. So we lose one, we gain one. And then I also wanted to update folks. You might have seen on the town crier that we have a date for our K registration, and that is April 28th, and that's going out in the paper. Still working out the details on how we're going to do that, whether it'll be outside or potentially in the gym as a possibility. So principals, we're all talking about the best way to do that, to get our kindergartners registered for school for next year. So that's always pretty exciting. And also with that piece that went out, and that'll be in the paper, just also a reminder that our pre-K is open and folks to contact Downey's community partners for 4-year-olds attending that program. I also wanted to highlight that made some hires over the last week. One, the ed tech position that we've been sort of holding on for a while and thinking about what our need was, and a candidate sort of rolled in who has a lot of experience that would be really useful for our students. And so we hired Gabby Giuliano for that position. She is an MDI grad and also worked for the Department of Human Services and has worked at an ed tech and other schools. Eventually, she wants to be a teacher and has some really strong skills. I'm really excited to have her on board. And we also hired a custodian, a new head custodian. And I'm really excited for Anthony, who's joining us. He'll start in 2 weeks. Just great skills, wonderful personality in terms of when you think about all the diverse. The custodian has a really interesting position. It's kind of somewhat like a principal that they have to communicate with the variety of folks within the building. They're not only talking with me, and then they have, the secretary and working with the folks in the food service, and then they're dealing with little kids everywhere from kindergarten to 8th grade. And then they have teachers and ed techs. So they're constantly interacting with a variety of people. And it takes a special person that can go from dealing with a kindergartner and then, dealing with your principal or a classroom teacher by just turning around. So I think Anthony sort of certainly fits that in terms of the culture of our school. So I'm looking forward to him starting. Some of the pieces I wanted to highlight, we talk a lot about trying to make school feel normal. And so some of the things that we're continuing is we did our annual badminton tournament that occurs different. We didn't have everybody in the gym watching, and Coach Johnson had to tweak the rules a little bit, but we did that, and we were able to live stream it to all the other classes. So that was really fun. We also had the annual staff and 8th grade basketball game, and we live streamed that. And the staff in that 7-8 pod with the 8th graders played sort of like the modified rules that the kids played, with how we were on the sidelines and no jump balls and things like that. And that was a close game. And as I noted, there are plenty of subs for the adults like me going in and out when we got winded, but those kids, they were all in for the whole time running back and forth. And, they were up the whole time for the last 20 seconds. So it was a lot of fun. We'll be starting up this month our school-wide morning meetings. Again, we're going to kind of use the model that we did with the badminton and the basketball. And I'll be in the gym, but we'll be live streaming it, but doing all the pieces of that as a way of reminding ourselves that even though we can't necessarily be together as a whole group, we could do it in other ways to provide that opportunity. Some of the, one of the things about sort of how we're doing school is a lot of teachers have been bringing virtual field trips into their classroom and doing those pieces. But we did have, people are starting to have the opportunity to go out and taking more time to get out and about. The kindergarten ice fishing trip, we did that last Friday, and it wasn't until everybody was gone and as The folks who were covering the kids on the bus ride back and Mr. Morse was sort of cleaning up, tip went up and got a fish. And so unfortunately they didn't get it when they're there, but they had a lot of fun out there and they utilized that trip for their reading and writing and doing math. So it's a great opportunity. And then our second graders were out in Acadia in February and went to Little Long Pond, did some snowshoeing and did some sledding. Extracurricular wise, we have our lists out for baseball and softball and track. And we're also doing sort of a shoulder season where we're offering floor hockey, and the 5th, 6th pod is playing on Tuesdays and they're playing today, and then 7th and 8th plays on Friday. And a special ed teacher, Mrs. Boucher, who was a hockey player, is leading that because at any moment, Coach Johnson will be a dad. And then he's going to take some time off to be with his new baby Arlo. So it can happen any moment now. And then I just wanted to share some student recognitions. The fact that our kids, in terms of the Bar Harbor Garden Club, do really well in that poetry contest. And we had another winner in our 1st grade class, and her poem is moving on to the Maine State Garden Club. So I'm very proud of our 1st graders. I know Mrs. Braun is really happy to bring that to the kids and allow them an opportunity to express themselves early on through poetry, and they keep winning. So good for them. In 7th grade, we have student Ariana Yin, who scored high enough on a recent math counts to be able to move to the state competition. So that will happen later this month. And then our very own and the Virtual Academy's very own Maddie Marks was able to move from the Virtual Academy speech contest onto the district wide. So, that was very exciting. And then I also listed the MDI Promise, and you'll see more about that. And I had about 6 folks lined up to be able to go and take pictures, but it was sort of on vacation, and then some people were up at camp or off skiing or this or that. But we had 2 students in our 7th and 8th grade who were able to show up, and we'll be making posters. So you'll see them on the end of the sign. You'll probably see them at the IGA. And around town promoting, keeping our hands clean and wearing masks. So that should be really exciting as we move forward. Julie, you put your hand up?
I did. Just a quick update to your Madeline Marks announcement.
Oh.
Maddie Marks actually won the entire district speech
Right.
contest, came in first.
Congratulations.
Awesome.
That was kind of wonderful for her. And so the big trophy is coming to Trenton.
Woohoo.
She had an excellent speech on animals and protecting animals.
And I think I'm happy in terms of just so you know, and around with Kim gone, we did have a relationship with Pro 31 Cleaners. They were helping us, and we hired them through some of our CRF funds so that Kim can focus on some other aspects of keeping the school clean in terms of the protocols we have to follow. And so they were able to continue that as we sort of wait through the hiring process. So the school has been able to keep up with its cleanliness, and I really appreciate those folks coming by every day and cleaning the school. I think that's it.
Well, thank you very much. That was a lot. Anybody have any questions or comments on what Mike just read? All right, seeing none. Mark, superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, Jennifer, because I know we've got a lot coming up here, but just an update to vaccinations. Really proud that We have 120 slots filled for school staff throughout our district for vaccination clinic on Friday. So that's moving along. I mentioned last night, but I want to make sure that, we get the word out to folks. So really proud of our kids that are doing the remote learning and all the staff supporting, but in looking to next year, we really want to get the word out that we fully intend to have all of our students and all of our staff back in all of our schools 5 days a week. And we're not looking at a platform that is remote. So I don't want anybody to be caught off guard. And this is all built on the fact that, we're meeting the health and safety standards that are set by CDC and DOE. So we're not planning for nor budgeting for a virtual academy. We're planning for all of our students and all of our staff to return to all of our schools. And I want to make sure, everybody knows that. And if there's any questions or concerns, we can hear from folks. Julie, I don't know if you have anything. I'm going to close out with that. I'll take any questions, but go, Julie, if you want to add anything.
Well, Mike and I talked about Mike coming back next time. So this is a future agenda item to
Yep.
do the data specific presentation for Trenton.
And the only other thing, Jennifer, I know we're going to cascade in the budget, but just, appreciate the opportunity that later on we've got a meeting with the finance committee. So we're in that season, and I know it's on everybody's minds, but we hope with the return of our students and staff, we're going to continue to monitor. We've always been able to host town meeting at the school. We're getting a lot of questions about that type of thing in all of our communities. So we're going to do everything in our power to make those things happen, following the guidelines, but the conditions about what we're dealing with and safety of our students and staff have to come first. So I just want everybody to know that's on our radar. We'll be thinking about it, and we'll work collaboratively with the town through that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Water treatment quote, Mike?
Excellent. I sent that out a little while ago, but I want to sort of remind people a little bit about the history. So before we sort of talk about that, and I had an opportunity to speak with Michael Abbott. He is one of the drinking water folks at the state who provided some of the information early on when we were dealing with, what was in the paper last year of the PFOAs and PFOSs that were in our water system. And he and I talked a little bit about those. And if you recall, this has come up at the select board meeting, as well, is that, there is some indication that, those compounds, are not healthy for us. And the EPA has a set number, and that is 70 parts per trillion. And that is what the state of Maine right now holds as their threshold. What the state does is there are three numbers that combine these PFOAs. The state counts two right now, and that's the PFOA and the PFOS. And for us, that was around 23.95. That was our number. And then if you recall, we did some subsequent testing to make sure that, those numbers were correct, because that testing was done back in 2017. And the results were similar from that testing that we did last year. So that those compounds are still there, but they're still below the EPA numbers for the state of Maine. At the time last year, the state of Maine did have a task force that was looking at whether or not they were going to change what their threshold was. And according to Mike, Right now there are a bunch of bills that are in the state legislature. One of them is LD 164. One of them, the select board heard from the Defender of Health and their executive director, because they had offered test kits for homes that might be near areas where these compounds may be directed. They have a bill that's also in the legislature. And in any of the scenarios, according to Michael Abbott, the range that the legislature may be thinking up is anywhere between as low as 20 as the threshold, which then we would be above that, to starting with an interim of starting at 70 and then developing an enforceable standard after that. And then it may sort of drop from there. So, basically he told me that the legislature could land anywhere between 20 and 70. Our neighbors in states around us are anywhere between 11 and 20. So depending if you're Massachusetts or New Hampshire, those states have picked sort of different numbers. But according to Michael, we're looking at a range between 20 and 70. So I thought it would be really important for you to sort of hear that before we sort of move forward and talk about the system. So then, as you know, Norlands came in and they said it would be helpful if we did some flow rate testing. So we installed a flow rate right before the pandemic hit. And then so we couldn't necessarily see what our peak flow was because there was nobody in the building. And we didn't get those numbers until October, until we had at least what would be considered, a full house in terms of the use of the water. So what you see from them that I sent to you about a week ago was based on sort of the flow rate that they saw, what our maximum flow rate was. And then they designed a system that, if there was, 1,500 PPTs of the PFOS or PFOA, that the system would reduce levels to 10. That's a lot of compounds, but ours aren't that high. And so the system that they designed is a series of containers that have different compounds in them to filter out these chemicals, and the total came out to $17,000. We would have to put that system in where the custodian office is, which means that I might have to move the custodian's office, which means that I might have to move my office again, but that's okay because my office was temporary. There's those little bitty logistics. But that's what we're looking at in terms of if the board decides that based on what they know, knowing that there's a bill out there that could potentially have us, right on the cusp of what the state might mandate as reasonable levels. I wanted to make sure you all had all that information before going forward and whether or not we sign off and start doing this. And I'm happy to take any questions or try to clarify.
Do you have any idea on the annual cost for the filters when they need to be replaced? Recurring costs?
I'm looking in the, I read this a while ago and I do not, Tom, but I could
Okay.
find that out. And
So,
send it back to
Mike, also along those lines, if I may, find out, if they offer within is it the changing of the filters, or is there a maintenance contract or the maintenance of the system? I mean, is this something that our head custodian can do, or how complex is this system? I guess would just be a follow up to that too, please.
Yep.
I would definitely think if our water is contaminated, it's a no-brainer to replace, even if the state mandate isn't at the level of what ours is, other states are, and these are our kids. I mean, I wouldn't want my child drinking the water if there was contaminants in it that say Massachusetts, which is the state right next to us, wouldn't allow. Like, why would we not allow it?
And we're doing a quick read through here, one of the things is that when the filters need to be exchanged, there's an LED light that sort of alerts the individual, but it doesn't say whether that's something that could be done. It does say that when you are removing the filters, there's a way in which it can be done so that 5 filters can come offline. It's sectioned off, and you can continue running the system, remove the filters that need to be removed, and then put it all back online without having to shut the water off. But I haven't.
And it looks like the 10 filters buy us 1 million gallons.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that's going to be roughly every year and a half.
Something like that.
Yeah, right around there.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one. I mean, 1 million gallons sounds like a lot, but I mean, if you maintain the 64 gallons per minute for 6 hours, that's only like 43 days calculation. So,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I'm guessing it's not gonna be that high for 6 hours a day, but I guess that goes to your annual maintenance cost about how often would they have to replace and when. And the other question would be is, at our current levels, what would the filters reduce it to? I mean, it goes from 1,500 to 10. Would this take it down to below detectable limits, or is there a lower limit that the filters have?
I'll ask that more specifically, Gary. I would guess that it's somewhere, based on the 1,500 and then to 10, that it's either pretty low or undetectable.
Yeah,
would be good to ask.
Yeah, but I also agree with Jennifer, is if we can reduce it to the lowest levels possible, it can't be a bad thing.
And then in speaking with Nancy, earlier today and talking about, what we could do is, go forward with the cost and potentially, based on where we are in terms of our line for the school, the maintenance side of the line for those larger projects. And even if we went over, we could absorb that through carryover, or depending on what that looks like, we could use part of the money from our maintenance reserve to be able to, cover the cost depending on where that is. So, that is an option in terms of, paying for the project.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
Just don't, the only point, Michael's last, Jennifer, if I may,
Yep.
we would believe that would be an appropriate use of the reserve if the board, we get these questions answered and the information, we're within acceptable standards, yes, but it's a life safety issue. There's a difference. And so, for folks that might inquire about that, that it's the judgment call of the board in terms of how to use that reserve. And so I think that's just a factor to note. Interestingly enough, just kind of in parallel about use of reserves, we just lost 2 boilers at Mount Desert Elementary, and we're looking at north of $100,000. And so that reserve is there. And, it's just like, that's why we plan for these things. But so how is a water treatment system different than a roof? The roof has integrity right now. It's not leaking. But the water system levels, you guys have raised some pretty detailed questions, and that to me, water quality for children and is a big difference. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And staff too. Children,
Yes.
staff. We're not saying we don't care about them or the adults that visit us.
Jennifer?
I'd like to obviously have you get a quote or an idea from them, but just a quick brief look online, Googling that system. Each filter is if it's the same system that I'm looking at, it's about $400.
Wow.
So yeah, it's $4,000 every time you turn it over. So, yeah.
Does it say on what you were looking at, Tom, like how often that is? I mean, I know it's about, it's going to depend on the flow of water used.
Yeah, it's
But does that
100,000
have any
gallons. No, because it
per
all depends
filter?
on your flow. Yeah, it's 100,000 gallons
Yeah.
per filter.
Thank you. Gary?
Oh, I was just gonna ask Mike, I may have missed it, but just just remind people the current levels.
The current levels, the EPA state level is 70 pppt parts per trillion. So that's the allowable level for the state of Maine. We are at 23.95.
So it's pretty close.
And so, and speaking to, again, the gentleman at the state in terms of Michael Abbott, in terms of what he was thinking, where the bill would land, again, he was thinking somewhere between 20 and 70.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for that info, and we'll put it on the future agenda for, the follow-up on that.
Yeah, I'll have everything ready
We're
for.
gonna move forward. Excellent. Next is school calendar. After last night's AOS meeting, and really wanted the boards locally to, talk amongst themselves, I put it on for the calendar today, because our next board meeting will be after the next AOS meeting, and I don't know if we'll be voting on it then. So I just wanted to have it on the calendar just to talk to you guys about it and see what your feelings are on the calendar. So I'll open it to whoever wants to go first.
Well, I think if we do extend the early release, I think, and Mike sort of brought this up, I think we need to figure out some sort of service for care at Trenton, since we do not have access to the Y or Harbor House or the neighborhood house. We have our after school is what's here. So I think I don't think that I can agree to it without that in place. And whether that's funded through the budget or it's cost neutral, either way is fine. I think cost neutral is okay, but I think in general we have to offer that if we do this change.
Yeah.
Jennifer, and I think
Yeah.
that we're in thinking of that, because I think that is an important point that was made by the community member in the comments from last night. We are in a position in terms of having funds through the after school program. The only piece is thinking about how best to make sure that those folks who are providing that opportunity also have the opportunity to get the professional development that they need, whether that's ed techs or, others who are doing that work. And normally our after school program is, run with our ed techs, but they also require some time to meet with teachers. But I know that Julie and I have talked about other opportunities, and she may share some of that in thinking about how best to provide that service, because I think it is important in our community.
Just to put into the mix in terms of thinking, there are several community organizations that have reached out to me and would be interested or would be willing to come to Trenton and run a program there with Trenton kids. So something that was based in outdoor science, or something that was based in that either had a thematic kind of approach or was just about, working with the kids in leadership development. And there's a number of different sort of approaches we could take, but we don't have to assume that it would be Trenton personnel who would be running a program at Trenton. The other thing I would say is that Mike has made sure that any of the Trenton families who wanted to join in the outdoor beach cliff program were able to get there so that they could be picked up from there. And I understand, transportation in general is a tangle for the AOS, but thinking about that creatively, we could get kids potentially to even more than one option that parents could choose.
Jennifer,
Yes.
just to add, so just a follow up, we've done a lot of work today, the admin team. So just to remind folks out there, Michael's going to be having conversations. I'm sure he's had some already, but he's going to have individual conversations with teachers as a principal, also small group or grade level conversations. There's talk, at least at the high school, Matt Haney is going to be doing some forums for parents. And I know the elementary principals are going to get together to decide whether or not they'll do school-based pieces or something collectively. But that aside, we have surveys that we're working on drafting right now. We did some work on those today. We hope to circle back by the end of the week in draft form and then get that out to parents. So parents will be surveyed, staff will be surveyed. And so we'll have that information. And then there is talk about circling back on the 30th. I'm not sure whether that will be I know it'll be in person. That's what the board chair has requested at the AOS level, but it'll be whether that'll be a workshop or I don't have any knowledge that anything will be voted upon. It's about taking that feedback. And then the only other piece you mentioned, the next meeting before the AOS or the AOS April meeting is, we don't know if we'll have something for the boards to be voting on that night, depending upon what happens on the 30th, number one. But number two, you can call a special meeting or change the date on your meetings at any time. So I just wanted to throw those pieces out so folks know that we want the feedback. We're going to engage and provide information. And so just want people at the local level to know that those things are coming, and for staff as well. Thank you.
The only other thing I would ask from board members here is, are there questions that didn't get asked or that you thought of after the discussion yesterday that you've either heard from others or that you have yourself that you would like to get answered?
Gary?
Jennifer, I guess one of them would be transportation. Just would it require an increase of buses for Trenton or maintain the same levels of buses for Trenton? And then the other one is, I know some kids take advantage of it, some kids don't, but during like the early release or the late start, is at the high school on Wednesdays, they have office hours that teachers can schedule and get, so kids can get focused help or one-on-one help with what they need. Is that going to be part of this too for at least, middle and high school students? Is that the teachers won't, if they are able to provide additional help?
I've got him down.
Me too.
If this does go through, one thing that I would like to see, and maybe even if it doesn't, I know that I often get asked about Friday after school care because people work Monday through Friday typically. Maybe this is an opportunity to be able to expand into that. If the ed techs aren't doing it on Thursday, then there's maybe hours available on Friday type of thing. Sort of trying to make lemonade.
My biggest concern, which as I, said last night, was that, these half days would amount to 17 full days of missed school. And during the pandemic, I feel as a board, we've really supported our teachers because they really have needed it. Teachers getting new positions, people being moved around, things changing from minute to minute. They just needed that support. And I just feel like our kids are getting lost. And, their emotional and their beings are getting destroyed. Kids are reverting back to bedwetting and fighting and crying. I'm getting calls from parents, saying these things. And I just worry because on half days, a lot of education doesn't happen on the first half of a half day. When my son was in grammar school, those days he watched movies usually for the whole morning. And that's not acceptable because now they'd be losing an entire day. I'm struggling with this one, to be honest with you, because I want to support everybody. And I know we're going to make some people unhappy. I'm just having a hard time.
Jennifer,
Julie.
one thing just to keep in mind is that we have now on average, even without adding any, at least 1 half day per month, sometimes 2 for different reasons. And then we have an additional 3 professional days during the year. One of which would be moved to before the year. And so I think your question about how much time we're actually talking about is really important, but I'm not sure it's 17 days beyond what we would typically have in a year. So I just wanted to clarify that for people. And the other thing is we have been discussing, there was never an intent, and this got mentioned yesterday, but there was never an intent to be doing this at 11:30 when we're talking about next year. So we haven't even put out a proposal as to which hours, but my thinking after today's conversation is we heard loud and clear that people want that day to be a legitimate day of school. So we need to balance that. We need to balance the needs there. I'm not trying to actually respond because we're not supposed to respond. I just am trying to put out.
No, it's okay.
And then, can I make one clarifying point, Jennifer? In terms of the, what half a days used to look like and what that looks like now, I know at our school I worked with because the middle school is in, their specials are usually in the morning, and so we actually worked with the fifth and sixth grade team and the 7th and 8th grade team to make sure that one of those times was an academic block, so kids are seeing their ELA and mathematics first thing in the morning. There is a conflict with making sure that health gets in because that's the only time we could do health. So one of those periods is a health class, but then the other period, rather than being a different special, it's either math or ELA, so that kids are seeing those teachers before they go home. So we're making adjustments because we understand that that's important time.
Yeah. And just so you know, where I came up with the 17 days from was, and I don't know where I read 11:30, or maybe it's just because the half day now is 11:30 that we have now. So from 11:30 to 3, how many hours times how many days a week, or how many weeks in the month? And that's how I came up to the 17 days. Math might not be my strong suit, so I will have no problem if I'm not correct. But I just wanted to let you know that where I got that from.
Yeah, and I think based on those assumptions, I'm not questioning your math. I'm just saying that there's some other pieces that need to be considered in order to kind of compare apples to apples. That's all.
Yeah. Anybody else? Aaron or Darcy, anything to add?
Aaron has his hand up.
Yeah, I have my hand up.
I'm sorry. I mean, I see your face, but I don't see your hand. I'm so sorry.
I know. I thought you had a full screen of everybody.
I do, but you're frozen.
Oh, am I?
And blue.
I guess my comment is I don't know if anybody really has a clear picture of what the responsibility that the school and the teachers have. Given that they have the children so much of the time, and I think the amount of responsibility that's placed on the teachers is underestimated in general. And this goes, with the perception that they have this time off, that they don't, like, why do they need more time? The kids need this. And yes, I think the kids are in crisis, like Jennifer mentioned, and they're having a hard time. My kids have a hard time, and we're trying to, attend to them as best we can. But I think that's just a reflection of the year. I think I just wanted to impress upon the fact that it's been hard, and the teachers, I'm probably overly sympathetic with the teachers and the school itself, and I think they need to do whatever it is that they need to do. Like I almost wanted to get like I wish somebody could give like a scenario of what their day is like almost. Like I start my day doing this, and then when I do this throughout the day, and then when I go home, I do this and spend the X amount of hours on lessons. And, they spend a lot of their time and energy in educating our kids, and they give a lot to our children. And I think maybe that gets overlooked sometimes. Is that? I guess I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. My dad is 80 years old, and he was a principal. He started as a lower grade teacher, worked his way up to assistant principal, and retired at the largest grammar school in his district that had over 1,000 kids in it, K through 6. And he retired at 50 because he saw where education was going, and he didn't want a part of it. He just had had enough of it. These teachers have to teach in a way, forget the pandemic. The teachers have to teach in a way that they didn't teach when I was a kid.
That's right.
And I'm older than most of you. So when you guys were kids, well, except for maybe Mark and Julie, sorry, because that they didn't teach when I was a kid. And they've got so much on their plate, and so much of it is mandated from the state, and they don't see, the state's not seeing what these teachers do have to do. And I totally get that. And I'd love to see how we can lessen what's on their plate so they can get back to teaching kids, because that's what it really comes down to, is getting back to teaching kids, not all these tests, not all these things that are mandated by the state. But unfortunately, our hands are tied. So we have to do now what's best for our teachers, and we have to do what's best for our kids, and we have to do it during a pandemic that we're trying to get out of. So, like I said before, it's still a struggle for me because I'm a people pleaser and I want to make everybody happy, and I can't in this situation. People are going to be unhappy no matter what we decide. So I'm glad. So this survey is going out, because we're going to have to really look at what these surveys how they come back, and what the teachers are saying, what the parents are saying. Is there a survey going out to kids as well, what the kids are thinking? This will be a huge, huge time, I think, for all the boards to really listen to what everybody is saying. And I wish us a lot of luck. I do.
Jennifer, this is probably not.
Anybody have anything else to say?
Jennifer,
go ahead, because that's what I'm not sure if I'm frozen or
so I also want to just talk a little bit about why teachers have a lot on their plates, and we can't get into this really right now, but I want to say a lot of it is because the boards
so,
in our district,
like I said before, it's still a struggle for me
and
in
the
this situation.
level of
We're
professionalism.
going to have to really survey going out to kids as well, for all the boards to really. And anybody have anything else to say?
Jennifer, I think there's a speech lag time. Julie was saying something. So I'll stop and then I'll let you start.
Okay, I didn't get anything Julie said.
I know.
I just want to say that because of the professionalism of our teachers and also because of the expectations of our boards and our communities, teaching is much more difficult now because we're actually trying to move all kids forward. We're trying to provide challenge just in time. We're trying to provide support just in time. We have kids coming from huge ranges, even if we have small groups. And we're still organized in the way that schools have always been organized in classrooms. And so we have a structure that doesn't really support the new demands that we have of teachers. We also, some of it is definitely impacted by the state mandates, but not the largest part of it. Some of it is federally mandated in terms of mandates that come down around serving the needs of students with IEPs and students with other individualized plans and English learners. But our teachers are teaching a lot of the time, but they're also meeting about kids a lot of the time. And that's taking a lot of their actual day-to-day planning time. And they don't have chunks of time to kind of like look ahead to say, what could we do that would be really, really engaging? How could we really make sure we're targeting the supports to meet the needs of all of our kids? So it's more that, I guess, that I think our teachers deserve the time to do the job that we all would like to see them do well. Does that make any sense?
Jennifer, I'm
Absolutely.
just gonna add one quick piece too. I don't want to drag this on, but I think we can all agree, yes, our teachers need to be supported. This is not about planning time, prep time. This is about, we've set an expectation for standards-based education. Education is evolving. And I think, Tom said it, Aaron said it. I mean, you've all acknowledged it. Parents and students need supports if we're going to try to support our teachers with this. And we talked about this morning. We've got a really good team. We're smart people. We need to listen to people, gather the information. But that's why people may be a little frustrated in terms of what's going to happen. We want to make sure we shape a proposal that supports our teachers, but supports our kids and communities. And that's what we're trying to do here. I started in the business over 40 years ago as a classroom teacher, and it's changed. It just has. We're expecting kids to be invested in their learning. We're expecting more from teachers than we ever have. And so for me, the time is the question of the time isn't the issue. It's how we do it and what our expectations are. And I will say too, doing this in the middle of a pandemic, it's difficult, but there probably isn't a better time for us to consider the question. We're learning a lot about new things in education that are evolving that we can apply, and we haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. So whatever we recommend to the board is going to be done thoughtfully with the best interest of our students in mind, but also support the needs of our teachers. And this is something that we're not going to do haphazardly. I promise you that. So I just appreciate the ability to continue to shape it and have dialogue. And this isn't something that anybody, Mike, Julie, myself, or any members of the team, we're trying to railroad through or ram through. It's very complex, but I will close with this. It's a misnomer for anybody out there to think that what we're presently doing is the optimal way to deliver teaching and learning. It's not bad. This is not the optimal way. And what I mean by that is we're pulling our teachers now. Okay. Before the pandemic, kids are in front of substitutes or others for good reasons, for professional development. And there is a better way to do it. And I think we need to articulate what the better way is, but we need to form that around what the supports are for our students, our families, and our teachers. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It is very complex, but we're listening and we're going to continue to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you put in the next newsletter, Mike, just like something saying because I don't know how you're gonna send the survey out to people, like to be on the lookout for the survey and how important it is to try to do the survey like as soon as they get it and send
We're
it
gonna
back.
do a blitz on that, Jennifer. I'm sure Michael will do it, our principals, but will make sure that we beat the bushes, both with our partners in the media and in other formats, to just make sure that we do this as far and wide as we can.
And Darcy, I see you're not on a microphone, so did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think the care is extra important for us in particular after school if we do anything. So if the survey says something about that, we're going to make sure that's taken care of. I think that would get more positive results, but I see the need for all sides, but.
Yeah. All right, other business. I don't have any. Anybody else?
I do.
We still have to do
Mark.
the budget.
You want to go first, Mike? You can go first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, no, budget. I don't know why.
Budget.
You skipped right
budget.
over that one. I was like, okay, we're good.
Oops. My bad. Mike, you want to start on the budget?
I absolutely do want to start on the budget. So I think Nancy sent out the most recent as a PDF for folks to take a look at, and I'll just sort of walk you through. It isn't any real huge changes, but I do want to point out a couple things, and then you'll have to make a call when you get to the end. The first piece that I want to point out is after getting some bills in for the last period, Nancy needed to make some adjustments to the receipts of around sort of $6,000. And so on the fund balance and revenue side, you'll sort of see an adjustment of a difference between last year. Our anticipated receipts for what you're looking at right now is, 543,000. What we had last time was 561,000. And so after working with the auditors and then sort of making some adjustments, she did that. Also, on the revenue side in pre-K, if you recall, we didn't have a full year last year. And so you will see that number under the anticipated receipts with a transfer from pre-K money, that's gone up to 20,000. That is because of the 12,000 that is sort of left in that reserve that didn't get spent last year. So she added that on the revenue side. So I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that, those adjustments there. And Julie, I saw that you might, okay, go ahead.
Is the ESSER 2 piece adjusted for the?
Yes, that I did that last. Yep, we're all set with that. So on the top part of the budget, there's the difference of the $6,000 for 1920 that needed to be adjusted after auditors, and an adjustment for the $12,000 in the pre-K as a revenue, and you see that as the $20,303. Those basic adjustments and doing nothing else with making cuts or anything like that. If you recall, the last budget we looked at, it was if we didn't do the nurse or the roof, and I had already taken out the what we're using the ESSER funds for in terms of increasing our technology integrator to spend more time working with teachers rather than with stuff. The last budget, that was a 0.9% raise with the differences that Nancy had to make. Our budget is at 1.14% increase, and you can see that right at the top. Now, if we were to add the nurse, the roof to include solar, and the nurse and the roof for both the solar and the library roof, then you can see what that increase is a 3.92, and what the increase per 100,000 is at 4590. If you are going to go to the back page, what I asked Nancy to do was to pull out, what it would look like if we just included the extra hours for the nurse. And at the bottom of the page under additional items, to the left of that, you can see what that increase would be per 100,000 evaluation, doing the library roof, what that would be, and then if you did the roof repair for solar. And then what those additions would be to that tax number. And so,
Mike, can I ask a question?
yeah,
I know we had said, to put the roof into the budget because we didn't want to use our capital expense and we felt this is how we do it. Will that be in a warrant article, a part of the budget, or will it be like like the pre-K was and it's a part of our budget but voted on separately? Do you know?
that is up to us. We can, if we were to, let's say, for example, if we were to put the roof and just the library roof and the nurse in, that would be about $39 per 100,000 in terms of a budget increase, and would get us up at around a 3% increase straight total if you were to have those there.
Okay.
So it would be less, but that is up to us. We can say we want the, either both portions of the roof or just the library as a separate warrant article and let folks decide. And we can just add the nurse if you guys are inclined to do that. And then let the other piece stand on its own, but that's a decision that, up to the board.
Jennifer, can I add one quick piece?
Yes.
And I hope it wasn't misinterpreted by anybody that was listening, but, I mentioned when we're talking about the water system, we're going to monitor this year's budget very, very closely. And depending upon, what the quotes are, what the school committee decides to do or not do, I didn't want to suggest that we'd be tapping into that maintenance reserve. I was just going to give that is an option, but I just want to give that as an example. But we're going to try to manage anything or any options through the existing budget. Thank you.
Yep.
I would like to see the roof pulled out into its own article because it has been specifically called out to us to have it. And I think it should be voted on as its own thing.
I'd just like to add too, I think Tom has said before, and I agree, and Nancy would agree, Mike would agree, that we really want to stay away from capital projects that we should be budgeting for those. We don't want to use reserves if we can avoid that. It's just not the way to do business. It's not I get it, but we build these buildings, we got to take care of them. It's, just like our homes, and this is the cost of doing business. The roof is safe right now. It's not leaking, but we got to do it. We're living on borrowed time, and we've got to move on it. But I do agree that it should be a standalone item. Let's see what the people want to prioritize.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was asking that, because I kind of feel that even though it should be a part of our budget and the money should be raised within the school budget to do the repairs, I think it should be a separate line item. And then people can ask questions, we can answer their questions, and then the people could make a decision. Because if it's in our budget and then the budget doesn't pass, I would think something for $80,000 that is not necessary would be the first thing to come out. So I'd rather have town people be able to vote on that separately. And if it passes, it's a part of the school budget, but it would pass or fail on its own.
I just want to add one other thing, if I may, Jennifer, and that is everybody here, I know the school board, Mike, I, Nancy, we're all conscious of the costs and we're all conscious of the impact. I don't want anybody to think that we're putting our heads in the sand. The School Evaluation Option Committee has done a report. They've made recommendations. Those recommendations are out there, but whatever we do or don't do, the school committee, these things aren't going away, and we've got to find a way. We keep saying that we've got to find a way to work with the town to find a path forward, and that has to be done collaboratively. The process we have right now is not going to yield positive results, and it is not sustainable on this trajectory. We know that. So the question becomes, how do we find that path forward? It doesn't have to be balanced on the backs of the school, I don't believe, or the backs of the town solely. There's innovative ways to do it, and I think it comes through dialogue and collaboration. And I just hope we can get to that place. I know that some in the community, Judy Sproul being one, has just talked about how we can find opportunities within the town of Trenton to be able to open some pathways. But the simple, the formula is pretty simple. If we're relying on the backs of the taxpayers just to continue to do this, it doesn't have a good ending. I don't believe. And so I just want to acknowledge the fact, going into the finance committee meetings, the town meetings, that this weighs on us. And oh, by the way, Michael, I don't know if you pointed it out, but system administration is going up by 24, 25%. I mean, people are going to say, what's going on? It's not a bonus for the superintendent. It's not big raises for anybody. That's the cost of the operations piece. And people are going to have questions about that. So I guess just holistically going into this evening, we're very conscious of that. We think of that every day. We've got to find a path forward. I think that has to be part of a conversation. I hope that can come up on the finance committee tonight. I just wanted to throw it out respectfully to the school committee. Yeah, it's just my humble opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Go ahead, Mike. Or are you done?
Oh, no, I was going to just sort of say, so then, we would have to decide, the board would have to decide in terms of the roof, whether or not we want a separate warrant article for the library and a separate warrant article for the solar, if you wanted that project as outlined by Danny Piper on our building and what those outcomes would be, or do the whole shebang, recognizing that the only reason we would be doing the south end of the 3-5 wing would be to add solar. The roof that we wanted to do right now is the gym. I mean, the library down the road, we're going to want to do the gym in at least a couple of years. But right now, the library. And if we were to just have the nurse piece in there, our total budget increase would be 1.61%, and that total number for our budget would be $4,359,588. That would be the total number.
Jennifer, just a quick piece about the nurse. Given the times we're in, I don't consider that to be really an option. I think that's really important for our kids and for our staff. So I just want to throw that out there, that it's an increase to the contractual hours to make that in line with other nurses. And I do support that. And I know Mike, I appreciate, it's a tough budget, but I appreciate Mike bringing it forward. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, let me ask you a question. For under food services, in 1920, Teresa was at 33,000, and then for 2021, she said that she would be able to take that down to 25,000, and then Corona hit. And I see for next year, it's going up again to 28,000. But if we're anticipating all of our kids being back at school, is she going to have enough at 28,000 when normally it was 33?
Yes, I met with Teresa to go over that to make sure, and she feels really comfortable. I think moving forward into next year, We did receive some grant money in terms of to make some purchases for utensils and materials. And I think when I went through that process of trying to shave some amounts off, I feel that that's reasonable in terms of trying to, do our best to, make sure what we're bringing forward is reasonable. So I did meet
Okay.
with Teresa.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments on what Mike has done so far?
Jennifer, I have one.
Yep.
And just to say, I totally support adding the nurse and Tom's suggestion of doing the roof as a separate warrant article. I guessing it's unknown right now, but if the current relief package passed with with the money for schools, I mean, I guess next time talk about if that would impact the budget at all.
Well, I mean, in terms of what our carryover will look like in terms of having, the current relief funds that we have, a bunch of certain supplies and things like that. There were cleaning supplies that we were able to purchase through CRF because, they met the needs of taking care of, what we needed to take care of and things that we had. So in terms of those monies, it did help our budget. Some of it is long-term, like in terms of a washer dryer. I bought a brand new washer dryer. There was $2,000 that came from CRF that we would eventually had to pay. But our old dryer and washer couldn't handle the amount of cleaning we were doing. So we purchased the new ones with that. New desks in the middle school to provide a little bit more flexibility in seating. If we were ever to have to come to a situation where we had to separate kids because we had tables there. So there is a bunch, and we did some computer purchases as well that won't be in future budgets as we take a look at what the MLTI, because that's going up again in RFP through the state. We'll be able to purchase less as we move forward because we made some technology purchases that we won't have to do.
And Mike, Gary, I think you probably know this. I mean, and Michael didn't say it, but it was a good question. We can't supplant, we can't, and we cannot or use these CRF funds or federal funds to take things out of the budget replace. But Mike, has done a nice job with managing those funds. So it's a good question, but it can't allow us to reduce our local responsibility. But we've been able to, by default, when Mike talks about infrastructure, computers and those things, those are long-term savings that eventually we don't have to bring forward. In addition, there's other funds through ESSA that will be able to have an impact. So the short answer is it's going to have a positive impact on us, but it may not necessarily negate big ticket items or costs like positions in local budgets.
Yep.
Jennifer?
Yes.
I want to throw one thing too. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Nancy's going to give me a sticker if I say this. We really want to be judicious with the carry forward. That money, we're really, if you look at the trajectory, it's not next year, it's the year after that we could see significant impact. And if we spend all that down or we don't set anything aside, that could have some consequences that will have more of an adverse impact or impact on families. And so I just want to make sure that Nancy and I and Michael would strongly recommend the school committee, keep some funds aside to plan for that. Thank you.
You're absolutely 100% correct. We are not going to hit another cliff. That's for sure. Is that it with the budget, Mike, or do you have more?
No, that was it. We really didn't make any changes. Wanted to be able to discuss those pieces at the beginning that Nancy had to make for adjustments. And of course, we may in April, when we have our meeting on the 9th, we might have some numbers in terms of insurance that we could talk about. But in the meantime, those
We will.
cuts made for March.
We will have numbers, Mike.
Okay.
So those adjustments that I made in March were that was the lion's share to get us where we are today.
Excellent. Thank you very much for all your hard work. Moving on now to other business, and I know we have a lot of people with other business. So Tom, I think you had your hand raised for that.
Well, I guess I have one question, Mark. Do they have to vote on a figure today?
Well, so let's do this. So we're going into the finance committee meeting tonight. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So history has said in past years, it's a question, has the board brought an approved budget? Or I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we go in this evening, we have some dialogue, we present the draft, and then we can come back for a vote. Am I wrong about that, Jennifer or Michael or anybody else?
Well, we already had that meeting because you and Nancy couldn't attend last one, so we had a budget meeting with them already.
Okay.
And this was more of like, okay, we didn't vote on it, so can we come back? So I feel like it's something we need to vote on.
Yep.
To pass it or not pass it, and then in April, if insurance comes in less than what we plot, or we kind of make a decision, then do we want to lower the budget?
So I think, and Mike, jump in if I'm misspeaking. I think Nancy would say, yeah, we'd like to see you vote on a budget. I would like to see you vote on a budget. I think Mike's nodded his head. And yes, if the school committee's prepared to act, they should. Number one. Number two, you're correct. When the numbers come in on the insurance and any other areas, we can bring those for adjustments on the town floor or subsequent to any vote. So you're in good stead that way. You can make adjustments. So yes, we'd recommend if the school committee's prepared to act, we'd recommend you vote.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Does someone want to write down the number to make sure they have that right? I can give them that.
Yeah, Michael, we want to make sure because Nancy's not here. So the number that administration would recommend, and Mike, you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? This is $4,439,588. Is that the number you have, Michael? I'm working off Nancy's sheet from this afternoon.
Yep.
That's the one I have.
If we want to add the nurse, it would be the 4,359,588.
Yeah, that is the number, the bottom line with the additional items.
Yeah.
So okay, so you just
Okay,
need
do
to
we
make
want
sure
do we
any
want two
motion-
motions? Do we want the 4,359,588 and then another one for 80?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
As the
I move that we what?
As the separate warrant article?
Yes. Okay.
And
I
you
move
can
that-
combine that. We can vote on a slate and you can combine them.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I move that we push forward a school budget of 4,359,588 and a second budget for the roof repairs at $80,000.
Second.
And that was a motion made by Tom and seconded by Darcy. Any questions or comments?
Mike, can you just verify the number? I heard Tom say $4,359,588, and the separate motion for roof repairs is $80,000, and that would total out to the number I gave earlier. I just want to make sure I don't need to tell Nancy we messed this up. Is that the right number?
And then, yeah, those are all right. And the total would be 4,439,000.
Right. Got it. Thank you
Mark,
for the
did-
clarification.
Mark, did you say 4,359? Because on my
Yeah,
report.
well, Jennifer, I said 4,439,588. Tom's motion was 4,359,588
Shouldn't it be,
for the budget, and a separate amount of 80,000 for the roof repairs, and the two total the number I gave.
Yes.
yes, I see that now. I saw the 4,339, but I wasn't putting the 20,000 in for the nurse. Thank you. Okay, Gary,
Approve.
Aaron,
Approve.
Darcy,
I'm sorry, approve.
Tom,
Approve.
and I approve as well. So moved. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, other
Good
business.
work, Mike.
Yes, excellent work.
With the AOS and the high school going back to in-person, I'm assuming that we're not far behind. I think it's a little early, but that's fine. It is what it is. But I would like to strongly suggest that we continue to, at minimum, record the meetings and put them on YouTube. I think that it is really great for communication. I know that when I was in the service industry, I could never attend meetings, and then you're a month behind on minutes. So by the time you've read the minutes, the stuff's already passed. So I feel like, we have the technology. It's not that difficult. At a minimum, someone can throw up an iPhone and then pop it onto YouTube. I mean, it's not hard, but I'd like that to, and we don't need to decide on it now. We can talk about it, but I want to bring that up, and, let's make it maybe even a policy or, an operation procedure that we do. I think it's important.
Thanks, Tom. If that's the will of the board, which I hope it is, we're going to make it happen.
Great idea, Tom. And there were other hands for other business. Mike? Gary? Oh, Julie?
Well, if you want me to come back and do the data analysis.
Yes, we'll put that under future agenda items for sure. We appreciate that, Julie. Gary or Aaron?
Jennifer, question?
Yes.
So there's a meeting with the select board later this evening. Is that a finance committee, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page going into that. Thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome. Yep. Next meeting is April 13th at 4:30. And then future agenda items. So it'd be Julie.
Yep.
And I don't personally have any future agenda items myself.
I'll have, answers for water treatment,
Okay.
and then any potential budget changes that we may hear.
Excellent. Okay, if there is nothing else, I would entertain an adjournment motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second, Tom.
All those in favor, Gary,
Approve.
Aaron,
Approve.
Darcy,
Approve.
Tom,
Yep.
and approved by me as well. I'd tell you all to get home safe, but you all are home already.